Welcome everyone. This is the May 2024 OpenNTF webinar, and we are going to get deep and dirty into VoltScript with Paul Withers, our colleague from the OpenNTF board, and his team from HCL that have been working hard on VoltScript. So let's just jump right in. Oop, there we go. I got to click on it. There we go. So here's a good long list of people that have joined us today that are going to share their knowledge. And in advance, thank you to everyone who's come on. You're going to hear from pretty much everybody on this list, but they've all been involved in developing VoltScript. So we'll get into the presentation here quick because I know they've got a lot of good stuff. Just a quick thank you to our sponsors, HCL and Prominic. They have provided resources that help keep OpenNTF available to the community, and we thank them very much for their contribution. And just a quick note about OpenNTF. I mean, obviously, if you're on this call, you know something about OpenNTF, but we continue to encourage people to participate in the community, whether that's offering up code or documentation or feedback or ideas, or at least even participating in our community on Discord and being there to answer questions for other people. By all means, no question is a bad question. And even asking a question that's been asked before in a different way helps people learn. So please do come and participate in the community in your own way. We were just at Engage, and it was really fun to talk to people who were new to the community, but also been in the community for a long time, and their ideas, and people who have been kind of working on projects on the side of their desk for some time. And it was a good reminder that we all learn from each other. So please do share and come along and participate. Quick note about upcoming events. We have our regular monthly hangout and repair cafe next Thursday in your local time zone. We actually had a live repair cafe at Engage last month and had a good group of people in the room, and actually we had I don't know, it was about 40 minutes. We had 6 or 7 different topics that we thought we might want to talk about after canvassing the room, and we only actually had the time to get through 2 of them because everybody was participating and sharing their ideas. So it was really wonderful to see. And an interesting side note on that was that people in the room, like there was more conversation. Trying to find one of the things that we're struggling with is to get people to show up to the online hangouts. Certainly when we have them in person, it seems more conducive to conversation. So we're still trying to figure out the right way to do the online hangouts. But again, we encourage people to drop in there and just see what's going on and bring a topic to talk about. Some quick user group notes. Sutal in the Czech Republic is having a symposium next week, I want to say, May 22nd in Prague. There is a user group meeting in Tokyo in June. And our friends in Germany are having their big annual event also in June. And then I know Vanas and the team are getting planning for their Nordics user group that's going to happen in October. There was also, this is not official by any stretch of the imagination, but there was also talk about potentially a factory tour this fall. And I also wanted to point out that yesterday, Panagenda held a webinar on their document properties add-in to the Notes client. And for people who haven't seen that yet, I very much encourage you to learn about the document properties box. Julian at Panagenda has built it, and Panagenda has donated it to HCL to include in the Notes client. And it was by far the most voted thing on AHA several years ago for people wanting to have a more flexible and at least a bigger window to the document properties in the Notes client. And that's been around now since V12. We've had an OpenNTF webinar about it. Panagenda is continuing to promote it, and Julian is continuing to develop it. And in fact, I gave him some feedback that he's put into it. It is something that is, I use it every day. And very much encourage people who haven't heard about it or maybe have but haven't tried it yet, please do go and try it because it is a wonderful addition to the Notes client. Okay, for those of you that haven't joined us on Discord server yet, please do use this link and get signed in. It is the active place in the community where people are talking about whether they're development topics or admin topics or a variety of different topics, whatever you need to talk about. We've got a place for you to come and chat about. I know HCL is using our Discord server for a variety of different things to talk about, including VoltScript and Volt MX. So that's the place to go. And if you're not there yet, please do use this link to get connected. Upcoming webinars. Next month, we're going to be talking about the DKIM and SPF enhancements in the Domino server. We're also going to hold our OpenNTF annual general meeting in June. And then in July, we've got admin best practices. One other thing to quickly note, we've been preparing for some server work for the OpenNTF servers, and we're expecting an outage probably in about 3 weeks. There'll be more information shared about that closer to the timing. But people can expect that there's going to be some small outage, hopefully small outage for the Domino servers coming up in about 3 weeks. Okay, a reminder about asking questions, and we'll do this very quickly. We want to have your questions asked and answered in the recording that we ultimately do post to YouTube. And yes, we have pretty regularly got people asking, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. It is posted on YouTube. And if you go to the webinars page on the OpenNTF site, we list all of our past webinars there, including Q&A that may perhaps go longer than we have time for. We document that. So please do ask your questions in the question and answer pane, and we are going to, oh, I see a question in here already. There's no sound. Are people able to hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. All right, ask your questions in the question pane. We'll save them for after the presentation. We'll ask and answer them at the end. And with that, I am going to hand over to Paul.
So, first I want to take you back to January 2017, not in Orlando, as you might think, but in San Francisco, at the hackathon the day before IBM Connect. And I think, if I remember rightly, Graham was actually on my team at that hackathon. But we had an introduction. Yep. We had an introduction to that day from someone that I hadn't come across before, Jason Roy Gary. And one of the things that he said struck me very profoundly, and it stayed with me ever since. He said he wanted to build software with people, not for people. Now, as an OpenNTF board member, and as someone who worked with IBM and IBM Press and other people in the community on the XPages extension library book, and as someone who worked on OpenNTF Domino API with a broad range of people from the community, people like Nathan Freeman, Jesse Gallagher, Tim Tripconi, and with related projects, Daniele Vistali, and others as well. That idea of building software with people is something which I very strongly agree with. Building OpenNTF Domino API with other people helped make me the developer that I am today. So when a couple of years later I had the opportunity to join Jason and Stefan Wissel and Michael Alexander and other people in HCL Labs, it was a no-brainer. One of the first projects that I did when I joined HCL was to set up the open source project office. The processes and the technologies that allowed us to open source lots of projects. And that wasn't just for digital solutions or Domino. That was for the whole of HCL software, for more products than probably most people on this call can name. Building software with people, allowing you to build better solutions for your customers, has always been at the heart of HCL open source. And as we've seen just yesterday, Sardar released the first Domino REST API extension by the community. We've had extensibility in Domino REST API since before it was shipped. We've had extensions in there since before it was shipped. But this is the first one that has been built by the community. And I know that he's worked with Stefan Wissel on understanding the extensibility API there and understanding how to build an extension. Building software with you is at our very heart. Now, you're going to hear from a lot of people on this call. It sounds like we've got a massive team. We haven't. I just wanted to have as many people presenting today as we could. So we're not going to be able to build everything on VoltScript, but what we can do is put enablement at the heart of VoltScript. LotusScript survives today because of the amount of code that's been written, the adoption by the community, and the extensibility by the community, whether it's script projects like OpenLog, whether it's LSXs, or whether it's things like small snippets on OpenNTF snippets. We need the same with VoltScript. We need a community of collaborators rather than just a community of consumers. And we want you to be able to build awesome new stuff and collaborate with us to make a thriving ecosystem for VoltScript. So let's get started. There we are. So we're starting off with the disclaimer slide because at HCL Labs, we don't gather user stories and create specs and plan everything through before we start coding. We start coding on day one, and we like to show you stuff that we've built even before it's complete. You're going to see stuff that is not totally finished yet today. And that's good because we want your feedback, but it does mean that some things change. So that's why we've got the disclaimer slide. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get into it. So when we were looking at scripted REST services in Volt MX and Volt Foundry, we had to think about who we're targeting here. And there you are, front and center, Domino developers, where you should be. There are existing ways to create coded REST services on Foundry. One of those is, there it is. One of those is JavaScript, but there's lots of flavors of JavaScript, and there are lots of different types. You can have JavaScript that runs in the Notes client right through to TypeScript, which isn't even .js files when it's written. The other language for coding REST services that's already there in Foundry is Java. There's a lot of variety of Java. There's probably more Domino developers who know Java because of XPages, and there's a bit of overlap, but it's still not covering anywhere near the number of people that we need to empower you with Volt MX. There's one language that does, and that's LotusScript. So when we're looking at putting LotusScript into Volt MX, we had some guiding principles. The first one was to keep it simple. Our code name, the code name that Bob Balaban came up with for the language was Barley, because Barley is not Java. We're not trying to recreate Java in a LotusScript style scripting language. So it's important to bear that in mind when you're coming to the language. We also wanted it to be approachable. I come from a background of not being an IT professional. I started off working with Notes and Domino as an end user. When I first looked at LotusScript, I had never done object-oriented programming before, but I was able to pick it up. And we want to keep that approachability in there. But you're always going to be switching between languages, and that's difficult. But if we can smooth out some of the inconsistencies, then we can make it easier for you. Now, LotusScript was added into Notes in the early 90s, I believe. It had been in other Lotus products before then. But the development environment has changed dramatically since then, primarily because of improved bandwidth. It's important for us to embrace that and accept that and evolve the development experience. And it needs to be extensible, as I've said. And if we can succeed on all of those, well, then it will be fun. Now, this looks quite a terrifying slide. I want you to focus on this pillar here in the middle. VoltScript is running in Volt Foundry. That's a middleware server. Think of it like web query open and web query save agents in traditional Domino web. You don't update a UI field in a web query save or web query open agent because there is no UI there. Your UI is separate, and it's the same in Volt MX. Your UI is on your mobile devices. It's packaged up from Iris. VoltScript is not running here. It's running in middleware. The other important point is that your data isn't in Foundry. Your data is wherever it's stored, Domino, other types of databases, web services, and it's retrieved over HTTP. That's important to bear in mind because you will need to adapt the way that you write your code to handle the performance. As I said, the users and the user devices are separate, and that means that all the arguments, all the parameters that are needed need to be passed in at the start. There is no more communication with the user until all your code is finished. So that means no prompts, no dialog boxes. You need to gather all that information beforehand. Foundry is a Java server. We could have tried to take VoltScript and run it within the JVM in a similar way to how server-side JavaScript does. That would not have been the right approach. It's better to run it as VoltScript. But what that does mean is that those Java objects in Foundry have the input parameters, the headers from the browser, those kind of things. And that needs to be passed down to VoltScript. So it needs to be serialized down to a JSON string, passed across. You don't want to deal with it as strings. You don't even want to deal with it as JSON objects. So we need to convert it back to VoltScript objects. And after your custom code is run, we need to convert it back to a JSON response to pass back to Foundry. And that then needs to convert it and read it in order to update its internal Java objects before sending the response back. This sounds convoluted. What I'm emphasizing here is that if you understand Java, if you know how to package up a jar file, you will have better performance writing Java integration services than VoltScript ones. But VoltScript is there for the majority of people who don't know Java. This slide is one that the Domino product managers use quite a bit, and I think it's a good one. Volt MX is not here to replace Domino. It's just another string to your bow. If you need to deliver a desktop app to people where you can't control their desktops, then MX can create desktop native applications that are passed to the Windows or whatever store. If you want a mobile app that integrates with some advanced mobile functionality like AR, VR, those kind of things, if you want it to have push notifications down, MX is designed for that. And if you also want a web interface and you want to reuse the artifacts between the two, again, MX handles that. And an example that Bernd Gewehr shared at Engage in his session, he needs to interact with UPS APIs. They have a Swagger specification. He wants to just import that Swagger specification into something, and allow calls from his Domino applications to UPS. But that needs a corporate key and secret, and he doesn't want to share that to all of his developers. By using Foundry and allowing his developers to call the Foundry middleware REST services as an intermediary, he can control that security. Now, yes, it's a beast, and not all customers will have the skills to install and manage, but we have Sophie for that, and I'm sure business partners will be offering hosting. And as I say, the strength here, compared to things like OutSystems and Mendix, is that your private corporate data stays in Domino. You're not storing it elsewhere. You're not storing it in MX. MX's Foundry is just calling that to pass it on to the device. So it's not being stored there unless you choose to cache it for performance. So to cover where we have been and where we are now. So back in 2002, a couple of years ago, this is what I demoed in Engage. We had Visual Studio Code with VB coloring. You had to run it through a command prompt, but we had try-catch finally, the first addition to the language in 30 years. Last year, we had a lot more functionality added, but I want to focus on one of these because a number of the others we'll cover in the demos, short circuit conditionals. We know that if you have an object like a person object and you want to check that the name isn't blank, you first need to do an if to check whether or not it's nothing, because if you try and combine those two in a single if statement, it runs both sides, and if it's nothing, it will throw an error. That's where short circuit conditionals come in. It runs the first part. If that returns false, it doesn't bother running the second part. So that's a real bonus. We had numerous developer environment enhancements, and we showed a proof of concept of it running for pre and post processors in Foundry. We had a host of extensions. Some of them had some overlap with Domino, but then we don't have a note session. So any classes that are created from a note session, we can't use. So you'll see some of these in action today. We also had some library modules, script libraries, you would call them, already available as well. A unit testing framework that had already been open sourced, and it's also ported to LotusScript. It's on OpenNTF for you to use in LotusScript in your NSFs. We're contributing some stuff back to LotusScript as well. That was an easy one because we don't have much of the new language functionality in there. September, we released Early Access 1. Doesn't look as if we added a huge amount of functionality there, but we went through and added full documentation. We did some more robust testing. We actually created unit tests for absolutely every artifact that we're building and hooked those into automated build pipelines, and you'll see the benefits of that later on. And then a couple of weeks ago, just before Engage, we released Early Access 2. This had the first draft of the middleware library that Foundry uses to convert those Java JSON objects into VoltScript objects. It had a new VSE, XML VSE, and EA2 was also available on the HCL software download site. The Windows package is available on that nice new site that you're used to downloading your Domino downloads from, as well as FlexNet. So on to demos, and Graham, if you can pass on to Ed first. Ed's going to talk about the excellent work that he's done on the IDE and the debugger.
Thanks, Paul. So most of you remember the early access one when we released the VoltScript extension for VS Code. Out of the box, you get a nice set of features from VS Code, like collapsing, span collapse, outline, and well, syntax coloring. Also, you have a bunch of extensions that you can install to improve your experience when you are writing code using VS Code. And well, VS Code is modern, is something fresh, is something cool. So I think it's good to link VoltScript and VS Code together and use to write code. Back in early access 2, we release an update to the extension and to the VoltScript engine to enable debugging of the VoltScript code using VS Code. And this is what I'm going to demo today. So I have here a simple script, just to keep it simple. And I want to debug using VS Code. So for that, I'm going to create a launch.json file that is already populated with default properties. There are other properties that you can find and set to whatever your needs. You can set the script context if you use context BSC for getting the context. But once you have that, you just click F5 and it will stop at the first statement, which in this case is print initialize. So I want you to pay attention to this debug console panel and also the call stack. You will see that it will get updated as soon as we are moving through the code. When you are debugging, probably most of you using debuggers know all the step modes that we have. VS Code has the step in, step into, step over, and step until or step out. But let's start with a step in. Step in, what it does basically is it goes through all the functions. You can see expand automatically. The call stack is updated. We came from here. We are now here. Let's call to S1 again. The call stack is updated. Came from here. I'm from here. You see that the messages are printed here. And this is basically step in working. There is also step over that, as the name suggests, it basically executes everything, but you don't step into all the statements. So you just click a step over and all the functions, all the methods has been executed. And there is the step until or step out, which basically what it does is it returns to the next statement after the call. So in this case, if I hit a step out, it will back to the line 11. There we go. And if we hit step out, it will stop at line 31. So those are basically the step modes that I wanted to demo. We also implemented breakpoints. So let's say that I want to debug this point. And I don't want to, I'm not interested in anything, just to hit this point of the code. Then I click and there we go. It stops in line 5 and then I can continue debugging as usual. And when I'm done, I just click continue. It stops here because of the breakpoint. And that's all. And if happens that I set up a breakpoint in a place that is not reachable, then as you see, it will return an unverified breakpoint. So let's say that you have a different script and you have a breakpoint set up there that is not going to be hit. you will see as a gray breakpoint. And that's all I have on my side, Paul. Back to you.
Thanks. Graham, if you can pass back to me, I'll demo next. Integrating that debugger with the engine is a considerable amount of work, and Ed's done a great job there. Obviously, as you saw, variables aren't visible yet. There's still a lot of work to do on the debugger. Integrating a fully featured debugger, even though VS Code has a debugging out of the box, is not a small piece of work. So again, I'm in VS Code, but the one thing you might notice from the top left of my screen is I'm on a Mac. I'm actually developing natively on a Mac. I'm not using a VM. I'm not using Windows at all. VS Code has a standard approach for developing in a clean, safe, limited development environment called dev containers. This isn't something that we've introduced for VoltScript. It's standard for VS Code, and there's a lot of dev containers out of the box for things like Node.js. So it's going to be long-term supported. So it's important to, we're doing things in the standard way here. So the dev container basically means that this directory is injected into a Linux container. Linux is one of our standard runtimes. So we're using a standard runtime that VoltScript needs to run on, and we're just injecting the files into there. Now, first off, you'll see this error here, and if I just hover on here, you'll see that it's giving me an error loading use LSX or use VSE module. You'll see that we've got relative pathing to the script libraries. Libs functions is there, but there's no libs VoltScript collections. That's one that we've open sourced. It's up on GitHub. Now, the standard approach that you would have here with LotusScript is go up to GitHub or OpenNTF or wherever it's hosted, download the file, copy it, paste it in. That's not the way that modern development works. Even a platform language like Rust now has dependency management, and we have the same. Now, VS Code does not have WYSIWYG editors. It is a coding IDE. So the way to define the structure and define your repositories and dependencies is in code. We're using a JSON object. To make that easier, if you start typing, then you've got Content Assist to give you a sample atlas.json or an atlas settings, or if it's uploading for Volt Foundry, then one specifically for Foundry integration services that pre-populates repositories and certain dependencies. And with that, you get a JSON with comments file. So that has comments in here, tells you what's required. You could also bring up the problems pane in VS Code, and it will tell you what needs fixing. But we've got our directories, our directory structure, so we know where things need to be put. We've got our repositories, and we've got our dependency that we want to pull in. Now, that's fine for these, but the repositories for GitHub, for pulling down resources and integrating with the GitHub API, you need credentials. This, because we're in a modern development experience, this should be up in source control somewhere, and this one actually is. So you don't want to be storing your credentials here. Instead, you want to store them somewhere specific to you. So in my user directory, I've got a .vss directory in the same way that Maven uses a .m2 directory, and I've got a settings file in there. Now I'm happy to show you this because I haven't got my credentials in here. I've got them in environment variables. We support using environment variables in here as well, so you don't actually have to have them in this file. So GitHub takes a personal access token, Volt MX Marketplace takes a username and password. And now I'm ready to use dependency management. I bring up the command palette, and because I'm in an atlas.json, I get install dependencies. Now, first it's prompting me for the base directory for the project, so we'll just gather that from a separate shell, and we can paste that in. It's picked up my settings file with my credentials, it's picked up the atlas.json, and it's asking me, do I want to force download? So do I want to download them even if I've got them locally, or do I want to pick up from local? That means you can develop locally and develop offline still with dependency management. We'll accept the defaults. And first off here, you'll see that it's identified that the VSEs directory didn't exist, so it's created it for us. It's then identified VoltScript collections is a dependency that we don't have, so it's pulled it down. And then it's done something pretty clever. It's looked for downstream dependencies. It's read the atlas.json for VoltScript collections, which is up on GitHub. It's identified that that has a downstream dependency of JSON VSC. It's identified from the atlas.json that that needs to be pulled from the Volt MX Marketplace, and it's gone and authenticated to the Volt MX Marketplace, pulled it down, extracted out the Windows and Linux versions, and put them in the directories. And we've also got VoltScript collections as well here. It's then created a seti.ini and an effective atlas. The effective atlas, like the effective pom.xml in Maven, just gives you the full details of what's happened, but masking your credentials, of course. Seti.ini is how we map between the name of a VSE and the file location. So here, JSON VSE is mapping to libjsonvse.so on Linux and jsonvse.dll for Windows. This is automatically created by dependency management, so you don't have to remember that it needs to have an LF line ending, even on Windows, that it has to have a blank line. And this is similar to how Linux Domino uses a lotus.ini for LSXs. If I come back here now and dirty the file, it compiles. Now, lists are quite arcane. To find out how many entries there are in the list, you need to do something like this. You need to iterate over the list and increment a variable. There's two differences to LotusScript here. First, I++. We can do that to increment I. Secondly, we've got return instead of get count equals I. Similarly, for totaling, we've got plus equals. That just makes it consistent with other languages, and actually it's a really big benefit for actually writing the code. But as I say, lists are quite arcane, so we've got VoltScript collections. This creates simple collections and map classes. We've also got a pair, which is the key value from a map. And maps, we don't have multiple types of maps like you have in Java. We have a single map class, and you pass in the data type or types that it can accept, a comparator if you want one, and whether or not it's sorted. Collections have another parameter for whether or not it's unique. Sorting is done on insertion, it's not done afterwards. And with the ability to pass in a comparator means you can handle all sorts of different sorts. map.put to put objects in, map.elementCount to get the total number of entries in there. And for retrieving the values, you do a do loop until I equals map.elementCount. And because we've got plus equals and because we've got plus plus, the syntax is very terse for what's inside there. It uses I to get the nth value, and then after it's processed the whole line, it increments I. Plus plus I would increment it first. Scalar maps have a toJSON method to convert to a JSON object. Our JSON object class is also used for arrays, so you don't need to check the type at all. And our JSON objects have a toString method, regardless of where they are in the hierarchy. ToString takes a Boolean, false for compact JSON, true for pretty printed JSON, and get value raw by a key. If you pass a key that doesn't exist, it returns the default value. So for an integer, that's 0. So as I run this, a list and map return the same things. We've got a pretty printed JSON and no errors. So that's everything for me. Next on to Devin to show some more stuff around VoltScript collections.
Okay, turning on my mic, and Graham, I'm hoping that you're sharing my screen at this point, so everything's
You are
good.
good to go. Yep, go ahead.
Awesome. Cool. All right, so I'm going to talk about VoltScript Interface Designer. It's available on GitHub. It's on the release site for GitHub, for HCL Software's GitHub. Interface Designer. It's a way cool thing that we've been working on. It's been out a week. Came out literally last week. So that's what I'm going to talk about. No, I don't want to download that. And so let me start with, we're going to take a look at VoltScript collections. This is the thing Paul just demonstrated, and he did a really good job. So here's my VoltScript collection source code. And in it, you'll see we've got all the outlines, all the cool, bring this outline up and bring this up. And again, I'm working in a dev container just like Paul was, which means I'm working on my Mac, yay, in a dev container developing VoltScript. It's way cool. So here's the VoltScript collections library that Paul just showed me. And what we did is we built this cool tool here called VoltScript Interface Designer. And I'm going to just, I'm running in a virtual machine in Windows here because I do Domino Designer, and Domino Designer doesn't run on a Mac. We all know that. So I do Domino Designer, but I'm not using Designer today for the demo. I'm just using my Notes client. And I'm going to open this NSF here. This is collections using the VoltScript Interface Designer template. So what is VoltScript Interface Designer? Well, that is the natural evolution of the old LSX tool that would allow you to design and plan for LSX development, LotusScript extension development. We've extended that to handle VoltScript. So this is the natural evolution of that NSF, and everybody helped out on it. It's pretty cool. And what this allows me to do is, from the name, VoltScript Interface Designer, it allows me to plan the interface for either a VoltScript extension, the natural evolution of the LSX, or a VoltScript source library, the natural evolution of the LotusScript library. So from there, I could choose script extension projects. This one is not, it's a script library project. And in here, you'll see VoltScript collections. And this is the real NSF and the real stuff that Paul used to start his planning for collections after we started architecting it out. And so inside this VoltScript collections library, you'll see we have a bunch of classes in here. And if I just expand everything out real quickly, you'll see classes have properties and methods and all kinds of functions and everything about a class that you can plan for the interface. We can plan it out. You'll see we've got a little red exclamation point on some of these things. Not to worry, that doesn't mean anything's broken. That's simply the indicator that we have explained ahead of time that this particular method can throw these type of exceptions. So we're planning ahead. We're letting other developers in the future who are going to use this stuff know that this particular method can throw an expected exception. So we're kind of getting ahead and doing things in a modern and correct way. So I'm going to collapse that again. And now I want to demonstrate a few things about this. So open this up again real quick. And you'll see we have all the classes, the methods, the properties, everything about this. One of the cool things that we can do with VoltScript Interface Designer is we can generate API documentation real time and then use that in the future. So here we have all of our architecture, and here on my C drive in my temp folder, you'll see I have a VoltScript collections folder. If I double click that, there's nothing in it. I'm going to come back here to my notes client. We're doing this in real time because we believe in real-time demos. I'm going to generate the API documentation directly. I'm going to go to my C, my temp, my VoltScript collections folder, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. It's going to take a few seconds. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see what it's doing. It's writing all kinds of stuff out. It's going to take a second or two to do this, and then I'm going to get a, hey, congratulations, your operation is completed. And now, if I come back here to that folder, and we go back into VoltScript collections, and there's an API docs subfolder. If I open this up, you'll see the architecture for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a proper my keypad doesn't work very well. A proper API documentation website generated in real time. So I've got my libraries, I have my collections for any class I care about. Say example, let's take a look at a map transformer or a map filter class. Here's a map filter class. It's a class for filtering elements. I can see its constructor method, its filter method, and it's pretty cool. And everything matches here, which also matches over here. My collection, there's all my classes. Way cool. But wait, there's more. Yes, there's really cool stuff. So let's say, for example, I want to take a look at my map filter class, and when I open it up, I have a new and a filter method. And so here it is in the thing. There's my public class map filter, all the cool stuff. I come back over here, and I'm going to take a look at the same class in my API documentation, map filter, and I see there's my methods class, my method summaries, my class description, what it is, cool things about it. I can come back in here, and I'm going to come right here to my map filter, and I'm going to say, you know, this is an interface designer, so I want to add a property to my map filter, and I'm going to call this property filter name. And it's going to be a read-only property, and it's going to be, double-click read-only. Come on, you can do this, Devin, in real time. It's always fun. And the comment of this is this is the name of the filter. The data type is going to be string, not single, string, string, string. Look at this. I'm typing slowly. I'm having problems because I'm a little nervous because I've never presented in my whole life. So now I have a property filter name as string, but because it's a read-only property, I want to set it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and decide I want to set it on the constructor. And so here's my new method. It's a sub, and we all do LotusScript, and so we understand what constructors are. This is a constructor. Add that to the comment, and it's going to take a single argument, and this is going to be the filter name. Filter name, not main, and it's also of type string. And for the comment here, I'm going to say this is the name of the map filter. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. And there, I see it. I can see it's right there. And I'm going to just choose actions, generate, and I'm going to regenerate that API documentation to the same place. And again, it takes a few seconds because it has to process some stuff. Cool, the operation is complete. And now we're just going to come right back to, come back to my browser. And I'm just going to go ahead and refresh this. And now if I come back down to my map filter and then open up, you can see we now have, it has a filter name, which is a property get. It's got a new method, which is changed. I now see the argument, the constructor for that, or the first argument that comes in. If I click on the new method, I can come down here. There's my public sub new. There's the filter name. There's the comment about it. Here's the type of argument it takes, the data type, any attributes. I didn't set any, and the name of the map filter. So pretty cool. All right, let's slap chop this baby. But wait, there's more. What I'm going to do now is I have added this new class map filter. I've added this sub new. I've added those new things to the interface of my map filter. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose actions, generate library source code stubs. Yay. And you'll notice my target directory is my Z source code VoltScript collections. That directly maps back here to my Mac environment, to the folder that all of this is in. So here's my map filter class. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to regenerate my source code stubs. And I'm going to say, no, I don't want to export my VSA templates along with, I don't care, but I don't want to do that right now. You can look that out when you play with this on yourself and test it out. It's kind of cool. So now what it's doing is it's generating those source code stubs. But wait, oh my gosh, Devin, we already had existing implementation code in there and you're going to ruin it and destroy it. And no, I'm not, because it's smart, because it took a few seconds, because it actually parsed the original code. It produced this file here, VoltScript collections unmerged.vss. That's my raw file before I made any changes. I'm going to come back here to my VoltScript collections.vss. Here's my map filter. And now you'll see we have this new filter name has been added. We have my constructor is the same, but also the code that had implementation code has not been broken. It's all there because it's contained inside of these mustache tags for the implementation code. So we can change the interface, update the API documentation, and update our source code all without breaking anything. Oh no, but now there's red on your screen. Something didn't work. Well, why didn't that work? Well, remember, we modified this function. We modified the constructor. I got way ahead of myself. So we modified the constructor and we added an argument to this constructor. So let's go take a look at this broken code. It's in the map class and it's down on the filter method of the map class. And you'll see right there, ooh, ugly red, yay, because we're declaring a new map filter. And if I just sent the mouse over that, the problem is it's smart enough to have told me, hey, you broke your constructor, dummy. So now if I just come in here and I say my filter name, you'll notice the problem goes away and I can save this and it compiles. It's just fine. Everything magically works. That's kind of it. There's no, denouement or proper wrap up. I'm done with this demo. Hope you all enjoyed it. Let's go back to Paul.
Thanks. So next we'll go to Chester, who's going to cover testing and automation, because if we're changing our code, we want to make sure that we're not introducing any regressions.
Hello. So to start, I'd like to mention that all of our testing let me introduce myself. I'm Chester. I've been working on VoltScript for about the past 2 years. I got brought onto the team because I'm a C++ developer, and we're making a bunch of extensions for VoltScripts, like LSXs. They're called VoltScript extensions, and as anyone who's done work with C++ knows, if you're writing code, you need to make sure you test it so you can spot regressions and confirm that everything works. And to be able to do this, we test our code in VoltScript itself. We have the VoltScript testing library, which is open source and is already available for use. This is written entirely inside of VoltScript itself, no dependencies on any external tools, which makes it great to integrate into any development workflows that you might have. I'm going to go switch over to VS Code here. I've got my copy of VoltScript testing. It's got a couple of things you can tweak. I should also mention that we made this using VoltScript Interface Designer, so it was very fast and easy to generate this stuff. I'm using StreamVSE as an example here. I have my StreamVSE unit test. StreamVSE is inspired by the API of NotesStream, but doesn't depend on any core Notes runtime stuff. So I need to make sure that all of the stuff that it can potentially do is functional. I have a lot of unit tests here to go through this and make sure everything works. For example, up here at the top, I test to make sure that we define the end-of-line constants that are used here. These are exactly the same as the ones from NoteStream, but they're provided by StreamVSE, so you don't have to worry about including anything else. We've got a build script here. VSID, when you generate a VSE, will generate a version of this build script, and you can add flags to indicate what you want to do. For this demo, I'll say I want to do a debug and then do a debug build, then run tests. And when I build, I want to make sure that I delete existing stuff, the clean flag. I'll run that real quick. It's generating the files, creates it, and it runs. And as you can see, no errors. So when this runs, it generates unit test reports. I've got that open right here. I'll go look at the unit test to start. I set a both flag when I ran StreamVSE unit, so it creates an XML file and a bunch of HTML documents. XML is very useful if you have an automation system. If you use Jenkins, there are Jenkins plugins that can parse this XML and make that nice, pretty graph showing your test results over time, so you can detect when regressions are happening and when you fix regressions. And if you just want to take a quick look locally, you can double click on it and open it up in your browser. Let me zoom in so you can see a bit more. You can click on each of these unit cases and see the results. So what does it look like when there's a regression? Well, let me go ahead and switch back over to the test. And I'm going to do something that happens a lot more often than it really should. I'm going to introduce a bug into the test script. So I'm going to change the constant for end-of-line CRLF from 0 to 5, which is obviously incorrect. And now, when I run this again, give VS Code a second. It does this. You can see the global constants now has a failure. We go back here. It generated a new folder for each run. So you can see that you can run this as many times as you want, and it won't overwrite your previous ones. I go into here. I go to index, and you can see we now have a failure here with a blue X. You click on that, and this overall run is a failure. And you can click on this, and it says expected 5, but was 0. And as you can see, that's exactly what we had. The value of this didn't change, but this one did change, and that's how we got the error. So we can just edit that and save it. And as I said, the build script that we use to run this, that is something that VSID will generate for you automatically. If you are a C++ developer or know someone who does and they want to be able to use things from the command line, it's pretty convenient for a lot of developers. We like being able to not have to reach for the mouse when we're doing stuff, and build scripts automate the CMake build system that we use to generate these. And it just makes things overall a lot easier, and then you can invoke them from whatever automation system you might have. You can just start using this and have it run the VoltScript unit test as they're made. So that's the overview of this, and we run tests every time we do an automated build of a VSE to make sure that they work. All 11 of them, I believe, we're up to now. So as we're developing them, we are assured that they are correct. And whenever we find a bug, we make sure we add a new unit case so that if the bug comes back, we can just fix it before it goes out the door. All right, back to you, Paul.
Thanks. And all those API docs and unit test reports are included in our documentation. We just copy those files into our docs and they're available. Actually, it's not me next, Graham. It's going to be Nick coming next. And whilst he just shares his screen, we did actually hit a regression about a week before EA2. The automated builds told us about that, and we were able to get it fixed before EA2 went out the door, so it's extremely useful. So over to Nick, who's going to talk about then taking that VoltScript that you write locally and running it in Foundry.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning from Massachusetts. I'm Nick Rosato. I've been on the VoltScript team since about mid-fall last year. And like I said, I'm going to be demoing building a VoltScript package for Foundry and deploying it as an operation in a VoltScript integration service. Like my other colleagues, I'm using VS Code. And in here, you can also see we're using our VoltScript extensions. And what we've got here is a simple a bit of test code in VoltScript where we are looking for a parameter called username. And then if that username is empty, we're going to get back an error. And if not, it'll say hello, whatever the username is. And so what we want to do from here is to build the, Shift P, VoltScript package for Foundry. That's going to ask the base directory, which I'm operating out of here. And it's looking for the atlas.json file path. And that has built our package here, Foundry Basic. And then we'll switch over to Foundry here. We will create an entirely new app. Webinar. And we will build an integration service. Webinar demo. And that service is going to be VoltScript. And what we're going to do is we're going to upload our new package that we just built. And then we're going to save that and add an operation. And we'll call this webinar operation. And we'll select the file name here that corresponds to the code that I have just shown you. And we hit add operation. And then I'm going to come down here. And like I said, it's looking for a parameter named username. And we will save and fetch this response. We're deliberately leaving the values blank. That operation ran successfully. Username is blank, and we see that the username is required error is given to us. And if we change that value to my name, could be anything, we return hello Nick. So you can see how quickly it is possible to just build this package, put it into Foundry, and get it deployed and tested extremely quickly. And that's it for me today. Back to Paul.
Thanks. So we'll go on to Dave next. That is a virtually identical user experience to creating a Java integration service in Foundry. So we're being consistent there, but actually we can go even further. So over to Dave for something that is really lovely.
Thanks, Paul. So previously we saw from Nick that you can upload a VoltScript interface that was built in VS Code, upload it to Foundry, and execute an operation against Domino documents. Well, in addition to uploading the VoltScript zip, we wanted to give the ability to modify and even create the interface directly within Foundry. So to show that, we're going to create another integration service to modify the name of a company document in our Domino database. So here I have my Domino database with company documents that has the company name and an address. As well, there are contact documents with, among other fields, has a company name that they're associated with. So we're going to go back to Foundry. Like Nick, I have an application here. I've created it already, company contacts. I've created a new integration service, called it Company Manager of type VoltScript. Now, as I said, we can go ahead, we can select a zip that's been uploaded. We can upload a new one, or we can create a new interface right here within Foundry. Let's give it a name and a version. And we can start adding the artifacts, the VoltScript and VSEs into our interface here. Let's start by adding a file. Now, as I said, we're going to update the company name, so we'll call it update.vss. Let's go ahead and add that in. When I don't have a selected folder and I add a new file, it automatically gets added into the source folder. And in addition to getting added into the source folder, we pre-fill it with a template, since this is going to be the interface for your integration service. And the template has some references for managing the context and returning the results. Inside of this block is where you'll add your custom code. Well, rather than watching me type that, I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in. So as we said, we're going to update a document within our database. So we're going to need the unit of the document that we want. In addition, the new company name that we want to change the company to, and the URL to the Domino REST API server that we're going to interface with Domino in the back end. Here we're going to get the document out of Domino by the unit. We're going to store off the old company name so that we can update the contact records as well. We'll insert the new company name and save our document. So then the next step is we want to update the contact records. So we're going to use the Domino REST API's bulk update API. So we have one HTTP request to update all the contact records. And our filter is going to be looking for a form that has a contact and company name by the old company name. And then we'll go ahead and do that update. So with this code that we've added, we've referenced or created a number of variables. So let's go ahead and add those in. So here we have our unit, our new company name, server, etc. In addition, we are referencing, we can save this. Well, one of our variables is referencing a keep server. To use that keep server, we need a VoltScript extension. So we'll add that in. And how we want to reference it in our code. Let's keep server. Now we can save off our VoltScript file. And we've referenced some other objects like Volt MX objects here for managing the request and response and results. And we're referencing it out of the libs folder. So let's go ahead and upload that. And we have our Volt MX objects. And if we look at that file, that is actually referencing VoltScript collections that have been referenced a couple of times here. So let's go ahead and upload VoltScript collections. And we're also referencing VoltScript extensions. Here we're referencing JSON VSE. In our original code, we are using the context VSE and keep VSE. So we'll flip over to our VSE files, go ahead and browse for those binaries. Now you can upload both the DLL for Windows and the SO for Mac. I'm on a Mac and will only be running on a Mac, so I'm just going to do the SO version. So when I choose that file, now we want to give it the name that we're referencing, how we're referencing it in our code, or how we will be referencing it in our code. So, oops, this is the context, VSE. Go ahead and upload that. And so upload the JSON VSE. And again, we're referencing that as JSON. And lastly, let's go ahead and upload the keep VSE. And again, we're referencing that as keep. Upload that. Now, under the covers, the Atlas JSON and SETI JSON is automatically created for you. So here we have all of our artifacts. We can go ahead and save our interface off. Now, to make our request to our keep server, we need to authenticate. So we're going to choose our identity service that we have created for this application, and that's to talk to the keep backend server. And now we can save our service off and add the operation like Nick did. And in this case, we're going to update company as the operation. And we'll choose our VoltScript file, add in the operation. Now we said we had 3 parameters. First being the unit of the document we're going to update. The next being the new company name. And the third being the server URL of the Domino REST API backend. So let's go off and we're going to update this Rutherford Mayer document. Let's look at his unit. Let's copy that. Add that as a test value. Our new company name, we'll call it Rutherford Major. And our server URL, again, this is going to be URL to our backend keep server that we use for our identity service. I'll just grab that, paste it in here. Now we can save and execute our operation. Let's authorize and authenticate with our backend. And you see that our document was updated, as well as listing the context that were updated. So if we flip back over to our Domino database, we do a refresh, you see that our company name was updated. And we look back and we see that we did our bulk update for updating all contacts with the same name as well. So here we've demonstrated that you can go ahead and create and modify it directly within Foundry, and we're looking at adding in code assist and debugging capability here as well. So that's it. Back to you, Paul.
Thanks. So we're going to go on to Jomary next, and because Foundry is using the Monaco editor, and the Monaco editor is the same editor that's in VS Code, the work that we're doing on the debugger and the IDE there just instantly links across, and that's still in development there. Obviously, having to upload script libraries and extensions is not optimal. We're looking at the best way to do that without you needing to store your credentials up in Foundry. So on to Jomary, who's going to talk about XML VSE and our documentation.
Okay, so with all the changes and additions we've been doing with VoltScript, as the team and together with the documentation team, we're making sure that all of it were well documented so customer and the future user can use them to find more details. So I'll be using this opportunity to show you our latest addition we've had for VoltScript extension. So if you want to go to the VoltScript extension, go to the reference here and go to the VoltScript extension list, and it will give you the list of all the current BSE we have had. I want to show the XML BSE. So this is the API documentation that generated from the NSF, which is also shown on Devin's demo earlier. So XML BSE functions are mainly used for both parsing and building XML output. We use the Poogie XML library, which handles DOM parsing as the backbone for this specific project. And also want to note for those who are familiar with JSON BSE, the code that we put in the XML BSE were consistent with the JSON BSE. So if you check the classes here, it shows you the properties and the methods with the descriptions and samples. But other than this documentation, we also have some guides on how to actually follow it if you want to try them yourself. So let's go back to the VoltScript extension documentation, go to the how-to guides, and here in the VoltScript extension guides, you'll see some various samples that most of the BSE has, and you can practice them. We want to check the XML parsing here. So these are the samples that XML parser that we can use. It has the samples for parsing through XML strings, XML files, and other samples also that you can use for traversing your XML tree using XML BSE. So to show this, I've already created the BSS file here. I hope you can read this clearly. So where I took all the samples directly from those documentation that I just showed you. So as you can see, I've used XML BSE, initialize the classes that we need. We call the load from XML for loading XML string, call the load from file for loading XML files, and these are the methods that we can use for traversing the XML tree. So get child will dive you into the sub elements. Get parent will step you back into the main root elements that you want, and the get children, which are returning the array XML object of all the sub-elements. You can use it to get the details of each sub-elements that inside the parent element. So if you want to run this, let edit back. So here are the output that we had based on the sample. So loading the string XML. This is the XML file. Oh, I forgot to show you the XML files that we have loaded. Here it is. So these are the returns of the methods that we use for traversing XML tree. This is the return child, which is the employee, which is the sub-elements of profile. This is the parent returns, and these are the details that we get from get children's. So this is just one of the examples on how to effectively use the documentation guidance samples. There's still a lot of things that you can check on the documentation side and things that we're going to be adding in the future. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Jomary, it's
Thanks.
Graham here. Paul, sorry,
Yep.
just quickly, Graham here. I had made a note when Eduardo was giving his presentation about where I can go to find out information on how to download the extensions for VS Code. Presumably that's included in the documentation?
Yes, yeah, we've got the same as Maven. We've got the snippets of JSON that you can just click on to copy and paste into your atlas.json. So it's just a case of copying and pasting them across.
Okay.
My turn.
Go, Rocky?
Yep, over to Rocky.
Yep.
There you go.
All right, let me get my share going. Entire screen here. Okay, I'm going to go quick. All right, so you're not only limited to working with VoltScript and Foundry, you can also work with it against Domino by loading the Domino backend classes, especially now that, 12.02 forward up into 14, we have 64-bit across the board. So VoltScript 64-bit, the Notes client 64-bit, everything just works. Now, to load the backend classes, you could just use LSX in the path, or you can get even fancier. We have the SETI-any. You can go in the SETI-any and just define notes and point to the backend class, and then come back over here into your code, and you can just reference it, use the LSX notes. So that's one cool thing. Now, let's say that you have a new database. You have data that you need to import into that database from JSON. As any LotusScript developer knows, working with JSON and LotusScript is a pain. Sorry, it is. It's fumbly and archaic, and it's really hard. We have much better JSON manipulation in VoltScript through the JSON VSE and through our script library that Paul wrote called the VoltScript JSON converter, which allows us to serialize and deserialize JSON more easily. Now, in my dummy data JSON, I have a bunch of company objects, and inside of those is a nested JSON object array of contact objects. I want to be able to import this. I could transverse this tree up and down and make it a little more difficult for myself, or I can run the converter against it and move all of these up to first class objects in the array and just go by the form name. So with the converter in the functions, you can see here I've defined, or Paul did, classes for company. There's also a function to call that will convert the contacts into first class array objects. And then there's a contact definition. And then this little convert JSON that pulls it all together, that'll walk this dummy JSON file and create my array of JSON objects that I can then use to do my import. So that's one part of this. And then I take all of this, and in my code, I've got an import companies function. And what it basically does is it's just like, LotusScript. You can see I've got a session, I've got a database and a document, I've got a path to my local version of it. This will still work to a server as well. It's just slower. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to do it locally. I'm getting a handle on my database, got my if statement, got to love the try catch block so I don't have to do all the weird error trapping we used to have to do. I print to get a count of my JSON object, then I do the converter. I'm sorry, there's the print. This one initially shows that the database is empty or whatever doc count is in it. Then I check the JSON count. This is where I'm processing it. All I'm doing is walking the JSON object that's created for my convert JSON. And I check the form. If it's a company, then I create it as a company. If it's a contact, I create it as a contact, save, and then I do one more check against the database count, document count, to see if I got the same number that I had of my JSON objects. So let's run the code. Come up here, control. I could now, to run this, I could do as you saw earlier, I could go up to the menu and choose it. You can also hit Control F5, which allows me to run code. I hit enter, and you'll notice it went ahead and did it. Now, I know what you're thinking, did this go through security? I had logged in earlier, so it did prompt me. If it has not authenticated yet, it will prompt you using the Notes ID that's defined in your Notes INI, just like any other external product would working with Notes Domino. So security still works, but as you can see, it ran really quick. Check my database, it was 0. Child count was 842, and after it, I had 842 documents after import. If I look in my database, I haven't refreshed it yet, but it was empty. If I hit refresh, all the documents are there. I've got companies and my contacts. So they're all here. And I am going to stop now so that we can take questions.
Great. So yeah, you can be using VoltScript right now with Domino. So Graham, if I can just wrap up with a couple of slides. Obviously, when you're running remotely from the database, you need to think differently about how you write your code. You'll see that we were doing bulk operations instead of iterating through a document collection. There's no print statements, those kind of things. And it's worth profiling your agents and LotusScript libraries, which you can do now, to look at optimizations that can be done. But other than that, call to action is just download EA2, think about testable, use the LotusScript Barley unit in your LotusScript today. Think middleware, so think about performance either side. Look at the documentation, try the samples, look at the language enhancements, the extensions and libraries, and let us know. So on to questions, and here are some QR codes as well.
Excellent. Okay, so a reminder to folks, use the questions panel in the go-to interface, and please pop in your questions here. But I'm going to hijack the whole thing and ask my question first. Devin, your presentation, by the way, everybody that's on the panel, please unmute. Devin, your presentation, I was confused. Is that something that end users can use, your notes database, or is that's what your team uses to do enhancements and generate documentation and whatnot?
That is an open source project that anybody in the whole wide world who wants it can download and use. We actually use it. We dog food our own code. We actually use it for designing our VSEs, and we use it for designing our VSS utilities and whatever other thing we're going to produce or spit out that's going to be VoltScript or VoltScript extensions. That's the tool we actually use. It is open sourced. All of the code that we wrote, everything about it, there's nothing in it that's hidden. Anybody can get it and go see exactly how we did it, everything about it. And you're encouraged to make changes or updates as you see fit, and push them up for pull requests, and we'll take a look and review and decide if that's something that should be appropriate and brought in, and we'll be happy to bring them in.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's completely open source.
The only caveat just to throw in there is that it does use an LSX that is only 64-bit, so you will need a 64-bit notes client.
Oh, yeah. Good point. And also, as Paul stated at the very, very beginning of this session, we want to build software with the community, not for the community. So everybody is encouraged to interject. And I do want to point out one last thing real quick, and then I'll shut the hell up and let questions go. Did everybody pay attention on Rocky's demo? He imported the JSON, he processed it, and he generated 842 documents in a Notes NSF in about a quarter of a second. VoltScript is insanely fast, and that's it.
Very cool. Okay, we got a couple of more questions here and only a couple of minutes, so we'll try and squish more in, but please do ask your questions in the panel, and if we don't have enough time, we'll handle them separately and then post that as a document on the OpenNTF page. Next question, for the backend classes that Rocky showed, is the Domino REST API needed on the Domino server to interact with an NSF and perform document CRUD?
Okay, so we were showing an alternative of that. Yeah, normally you would, like when you do it from Foundry, yes, you use the Drappy backend to do it. I was doing it directly, and you don't have to have Keep or Drappy running to work with it. It's just like working with it. I don't know, for some of you older guys, it's like when we used to do DDE calls or something like that, or use an external program to access Notes data. You know, you would get the little prompt and all that. It's very similar to that. That's kind of what we're doing. So it's still using Note security. It's still using the Note session that's running and all of that. So it just gives an alternative way of working with Domino besides Drappy.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, Foundry will just be through Drappy.
Right.
Okay. Next question. Will there? Okay, this is more of a product management question. Yeah, I should have said reminder to people that we want to stay on topic and project management questions. We don't have any project managers on this or product managers on this call, but Paul, you can decline this if you want. Will there ever be a VoltScript runtime inside Domino to run stuff like REST services over the server?
We were taking bets on the over/under and how fast that question would get asked, actually.
Yeah, that's. I apologize.
Yeah, there's two parts, as you say. When will be is a question, or when or if is a question for product management in Domino. That work needs to be done by the Domino team. We don't have access to any of that source code. If you want it in Domino, there's also going to be a lot of additional stuff. As you see, we're not using it in DDE. There are no editors in DDE. If you want it with Domino, then maybe there are other options but things may work differently, as we saw there with what Rocky was doing.
Yeah, we're batting around some ideas. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, generated VSEs that you make through Visual VoltScript Interface Designer can be loaded by Domino Designer. So if you want to make an extension for Domino Designer, you can.
Cool. Okay, let's just wrap here. I wanted to share quickly on the screen here. This is the OpenNTF Discord page for Volt MX and Volt MX Go. So in the Discord, we've got a specific area for having conversations, and the guys on this team are active in this channel. So this is the place to go. Adam's here as well, lurking in the background, but he just posted up the information about where to go to get all of the good, cool new stuff, what's new, and the early access to links. So this is the place to actually talk and ask your questions about Volt MX and Volt MX Go, VoltScript and what have you. So we'll just leave that on the screen for people to see as well. And with no other questions and 1 minute to go in our time, I will say thank you to everyone for your presentations today. This was very interesting, and I appreciate your contributions to the community. Paul, any quick wrap?
No, just as with the call to action, use it, learn what you like about it, and that will give you a better information on what you want in or with Domino from it.
Brilliant. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again, everybody, and have a good day.
Bye now.